Help is just a click away with Shoreside Therapy's free 15-minute consultation. At Shoreside Therapies, they offer personalized therapy services that combine evidence-based techniques with genuine care and understanding. They provide various solutions to make the therapy process more accessible, including virtual appointments and assistance with insurance benefits. Their team of licensed therapists is dedicated to helping you build resilience and confidence while navigating life's challenges. Join Shoreside Therapies on your journey to finding inner peace and happiness. Go to shoresidetherapies.com for a free 15-minute consultation and discover the benefits of counseling. At Shoreside Therapies, again, shoresidetherapies.com, and schedule your free consultation right online. Welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm Lori Groh, your host, mental health therapist, and practice owner. Each month, we'll showcase a central theme and provide weekly practical hacks, inspiring interviews, and valuable advice from wellness professionals. Our aim is to help you streamline your wellness and mental health journey. So let's start the show. Hi, welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lori Groh. Today, we have Brandon Wells, Kristen Holmes, and Allie Devine from Shoreside Therapies. There's more information about all of them in our show notes, but let's get started with the topic. Today, we are talking about mental health in the workplace. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Lori, for hosting.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. All right, so let's get to our first question. Here we go.
I'm in my 20s and just got my first full-time job. I went from 20-hour weeks, taking a sudden break due to a health scare, and then bam, I am clocking in 50 hours. My life now feels like I am only working. No room for other things. The job's actually pretty great with good benefits, and I even get to watch my favorite shows sometimes on my phone while at work, but I don't have a chance to sit down all day. My schedule is really hard. When I roll out of bed for work, my family's already out the door. By the time I shuffle back home, they're hitting the hay. It's like I'm on this solo journey day in and day out. Sundays are my only breather, and guess where I spend them? Yeah, with my boyfriend's family. My personal hobbies. Non-existent lately. I'm throwing it out there, how do I balance the full-time job with life's other bits? Chores, family time, and hobbies. I don't get how people do this. Any suggestions on what I can do?
So how does he juggle everything?
If he's saying this is his first time with a full-time job, it's definitely going to be an adjustment period for him. And you start to build up a little bit more of an endurance for those types of hours, and trying to make sure that he's setting good boundaries with other people in his life. He's got to make sure he takes time for himself first prior to maybe giving to others. He could check in at work to see if there are options for some flex time so he doesn't always have to miss some of the family activities. Most workplaces have been pretty flexible since the pandemic, and there might be more options that he thinks in terms of that. But those are some of my suggestions, but it'll take a period of adjustment for him to be able to have the free time he wants and have some discipline over the structure of his life.
Yeah, I agree with you that it does take some time to get used to that, especially if you are in school and there's a lot of flexibility typically in college. People a lot of times have difficulty in that first job. Yep. Just because of the fact that all the flexibility and freedom tend to dissipate.
Also, having some kind of structure and routine can be helpful if you have limited free time, so that you're not spending that time that you do have thinking about what you should do, creating those established patterns so that you fall into that really easily, whether it's a workout routine, an exercise routine, meal prepping, that kind of stuff can help give you some of that time back.
Yeah, I like that idea too. Get ahead of things. All right, next up.
This year has been an absolute doozy for my mental health, and it has shown in my work. One of the biggest ways my depression manifests is as foggy-headedness and an inability to concentrate. A step beyond that, and I'm crying every day. Overall, I'm managing with the help of antidepressant, but the depression is not gone. My mood ebbs and flows. People understand sadness. And when you're crying a lot, it's a pretty obvious indicator that something in your brain chemistry is wrong, even if you don't relate to mental health issues. But I feel like my more minor mood dips just come across as laziness or a lack of caring, and I feel like everyone on my team thinks of me as unreliable. And I am unreliable right now. Surprise, surprise, that is not helping with my depression. I'm not in the position of daily crying anymore. Like I said, when the symptoms are that tangible and severe, it's easier to explain and address. It was that bad at one point, but I'm not in that place anymore. At this point, my depression is decently managed by medication and lifestyle, just obviously not perfectly. It doesn't go away overnight. I'm looking for advice about managing mild, longer-term depression in the workplace versus an acute issue.
It's important to remember that depression doesn't just go away, even with medication. And so sometimes that looks like lowering our expectations and doing some work as far as reframing in our perspective. It sounds like therapy might also be helpful here, because when you combine therapy with antidepressants, the rate of being able to better manage that is much higher. And so there's some things that I'm hearing just as far as self-talk, and I don't know if that's coming across as just because they're writing it and trying to summarize it, but I think that self-talk piece might also help with some of the things that this person might be feeling or might be struggling with in regards to where they see their depression really affecting their work or their personal life.
Yeah, adding in the therapy, because there's certain things that sound like it's more manageable, right? Like he feels like he's managing the depression. And so it might be more of how does he deal with those day-to-day interactions, or how does he get motivated? It sounds like too.
One thing to take into consideration for clients that they get through some of the severe components of depression, and medication can manage that. And I agree with Kristen that making sure that he hasn't developed a sense of himself that's negative, that's unhealthy, the reframing, the cognitive work will really help. So there's a biological component to depression, then there's a psychological component, and that's where kind of therapy comes in. But sometimes a low-level depression that stays around for a while, like a dysthymic disorder, that's something that can be pretty insidious. So people start to say to themselves, I'm really through most of this depression. I can live with this kind of low-level depression. And that's not a healthy position to take. The goal should be remission from your depression, not, hey, it's 80% better. So people will live with that 20% that just hangs around, and they don't understand that's something to be attacked as well. So the goal really should be remission from symptomatology, not just I'm going to live with this low-level depression in perpetuity.
Yeah, and going off that, like how I think therapy could help is just working with your therapist to address some of that negative cognitive bias that's associated with depressive illnesses. So like I noticed that they had this perception that their coworkers saw them a certain way. That might actually not be accurate, but rather like a symptom of that depression. So working with your therapist to challenge some of those automatic negative thoughts or perceptions, and like setting some small behavioral goals that might just help to get them there into that remission state.
I would also say if you may not have access to a therapist right now, or maybe it's something that you're not necessarily open to, like looking at work from different people on self-compassion. There's a self-compassion workbook out there and a book that goes with it. Journaling can be really effective here. So there are some ways that you can work through and see what comes up as far as cognitive bias and beliefs go, because we have to remember we have a core belief, and we feel feelings and we see situations and actions and things like that out of that core belief. And so depression comes from how we respond to those core beliefs. So in this instance, their depression, the chemical imbalance can really affect just how we center on those things, work around core beliefs could really be helpful. And Brandon and Allie were saying, just echoing off that cognitive work, that psychological work, that would be really beneficial here.
You can see in how he's talking about it that he can see and notices that link between not being reliable, for instance, or believing he's not reliable, and that contributes to the depressive type thoughts and feelings. How do we start to work on feeling more reliable? And it does have to do with the actions. And that can help with the overall depression if he's focusing in on, okay, how do I become more reliable? Maybe those days where he's not feeling motivated, maybe it's not actually, oh, just do it, but maybe it's letting the team know, letting his boss know, hey, this is coming up for me, not feeling very motivated, and maybe X, Y, or Z would help, or asking if they have any suggestions as well. And so if he's open with talking about mental health, saying, okay, this is coming up and I want to deal with it, and I'm letting you all know, that can help with people around him feeling like he's reliable, because then he's being open and honest with where he's at and not just flaking, right? Because people tend to forget that there can be a mental health component to that. So it's that communication, I think, too, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also that, Lori, if he has some reliable and trusted people at work that can give him some honest feedback about how he's doing, he might be able to refute some of those messages that might not be completely accurate or a little distorted. So if he has somebody at work, it might be a coworker, it might be a direct manager, that's able to see the improvement he's made, and maybe he checks in with them to see if they do see what he's seeing. And that can really help when other people are saying, boy, I don't notice any slippage in your work product, for example. Mm-hmm. If he's comfortable with that and he's in a setting that he feels that he's not going to be judged for, that'd be a fantastic way to dispute some of those thoughts.
Yeah. The cognitive piece that goes along with that is changing the view of this global label of I'm an unreliable person to I'm having a difficult day, and so I might not have been as reliable today.
Yeah, because acknowledging that at this time I wasn't reliable, a much different feeling. I'm not a reliable person. And even like Brandon was saying too, checking in with somebody that he feels comfortable with or close with, they can give him some feedback. And it's that second part of what that means to him. It might mean that, oh, this is a huge deal and everybody's upset with me and I'm not worth anything. Or that friend says, hey, yeah, but we know you're trying. Or I made that mistake once too. Or this is a work in progress. All of those things that could be really helpful as far as how he's feeling about that idea of unreliability. All right. So let's go in to the last one.
I have tears in my eyes as I write this, but I'm at wit's end trying to do a job that requires so much social energy out of me. Being in a corporate environment, I am feeling so overwhelmed with everything in this atmosphere. I've been at this company for a year because I really needed the money, and now I got transferred to a different department making more calls. So in this position, I've only been here a week and a half, although I try to make the best out of my job and be grateful for it. It goes against my very nature, and it's beginning to cause debilitating stress. I make over 80 calls a day, which requires me to be happy, joyful, and talkative to those that I speak to, and the mask is starting to fall off. I'm so over it. I can only pretend for so long, but this job is so uncomfortable to me. I don't know what to do. I'm just feeling so frustrated, and it feels like I'm punishing myself for being here and making myself do this type of work. I don't know how to relieve this constant pressure and frustration anymore. I hate adulting, and the social anxiety only grows worse as I age. I don't even know what I'm asking for here. I think I just need support. They say putting yourself in uncomfortable situations makes you grow and be better, but this has been torture for me for so long. What should I do? I feel like I should be able to do this.
I think if it's an option, obviously this isn't always the case, but I think that I understand that this person has heard that putting yourself in uncomfortable situations can help you get confidence socially. And that is true, but it seems like this is really pushing them beyond that growth range and into sort of a flooding kind of situation where they might actually experience a loss of confidence in their ability to navigate that. And so, like, maybe there would be more appropriate social exposures that are less demanding and less challenging than this, finding a more manageable position for where they're at right now, not where they hope to be.
Great answer, Allie. I couldn't agree with you more. That is probably part of what's happening, right? There's that negative feedback loop, and there's no actual reduction in the stress or anxiety or distress. It's just going right back into it. And so there's not going to be any reduction in distress. I think she's trying to talk about that exposure technique she's trying to talk about doesn't always fit in situations where somebody's not at the end of it saying, oh yeah, that wasn't so bad. She's not experiencing that. She's actually experiencing that was horrible to some degree and then doing it all over again.
Instead of listening to her body, instead of listening to her feelings or emotions, everything's screaming that this is not a good fit for her, right? So sometimes we avoid or we decide we're not going to listen to what all the feedback is. And we're going to decide to go against the grain, against how we are wired. And she said, I should or ought to be able to do this. If somebody's an introvert and you put them in an extrovert's job setting, they're going to struggle. So it's important for her to know herself and listen to that feedback that her body and mind is telling you. So it only makes sense to do exposure when there's an irrational belief. For example, everybody at this party is going to hate me. We can probably suss out that's not true. So putting somebody in a situation at a party to see if when they come out of it is not as bad as they thought, that makes sense, right? But putting somebody in a uncomfortable position just for the fact that you feel as though you should or ought to be able to do that, it's counterintuitive, counterproductive.
Yeah, that's a good point of that it only works when there's that irrational thought or fear, which that's not what's happening here.
No, she's actually saying that this isn't for her.
Yeah.
This doesn't work for what she wants, but then she's forcing herself into it because of circumstances. I need the money, right? Instead of looking at my health comes first. If your health comes first, putting yourself in a situation that's toxic over and over again every day for you is not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the window of tolerance. And I think when we talk about exposure work, we're helping grow and strengthen that window of tolerance, right? But when we are at high levels of hyperarousal, stress, some of the things, physiological symptoms that come up, those kinds of things, we're really taxing that system. And they could be experiencing things also outside of work that look like just that complete bottom falls out and they don't have any energy for their outside life and things like that. And so I would echo what Allie and Brandon have also said, and you as well, Lori, is that it doesn't sound like the situation is serving this person anymore. I think that there are times in our life where we can look at things and say, okay, this is something that I need. This is helpful. This is beneficial. And then at a certain point, like those experiences, those needs change. And it sounds like being at this company and the pay and that kind of thing has been beneficial for this person. But it sounds like that's no longer serving this person because now they're experiencing things that can affect their emotional, mental, and physical health in this instance. They just remembering, reframing that anytime we're in that idea of we should be doing something, we should do this or we should do that, or this is going to make us better or things. I think those are signs that maybe we need to reevaluate what our goal is and what our focus is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, thinking about when people come in to see us, sometimes, and you tell me if you all experience this, but sometimes people will come in with symptoms of depression or anxiety. And you hear stories like this about their work where they're actually having all of those symptoms mostly in relation to their work, not aligning with who they are as a person. And sometimes it's so far gone. For this person sounds like that difference is so huge that it's like a torture to oneself to be not only not doing something that you feel connected to or feel you have a purpose to or feel competent in, but almost this complete opposite and doing it day in and day out. Do you all experience that? Do you have clients that come in and as you're talking with them more and more, you're recognizing, oh yeah, that this actually has more to do with their work versus it being maybe even like a clinical diagnosis of anxiety or depression?
Yeah, I definitely see that, Lori. And I think that often results in this two-part approach. The first part is if you're doing something that makes you unhappy, that's causing you so much stress and discomfort, let's look at your values. What's important to you? What are you good at? And create a long-term plan to get you into something that you feel better doing. But then also it's like, how do I tolerate the discomfort, the stress, the anxiety that comes with what I'm currently doing?
Two parts to that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in this instance, while you're in this situation, self-care is going to be really helpful and really beneficial for you because you need to have that time to recharge and you need to find things that are helpful and that are increasing your confidence outside of work, right? If this is a place that you're spending a lot of your time and you're struggling with like your own confidence and your own self-esteem, then doing things for your own benefit outside that increase that confidence and increase that self-esteem and help you regulate outside of work would be something I think that would be helpful as they kind of process if this is the best fit for them.
Yeah, Kristen, that's a good point too of what can you do in the here and now? And you might not be able to change your job immediately, but you definitely can look at that other portion of your day and say to yourself, okay, what else? Where can I get this in my life? And it probably has to do with feeling like what you are doing is important and feeling like you're good at it. Like you said, that confidence piece. And so that can also be a way to guide you into what's next. Thinking about, okay, these are the things that I feel like I'm really good at. This is a hobby that I do. And let's say it's something creative. Maybe you aren't necessarily going to do that particular job day in and day out. But if creativity is one of the main things that brings you happiness and joy, finding a position where that is either a key component or a component of it. Doesn't have to be everything. But if you're in a position where you don't like 100% of the job, that's a good signal that it's not meant for you. There's a lot of different steps that need to take place. I think getting to know yourself better, like Brandon was talking about, is a key component into finding work that you value, but does need to match up with your values and your beliefs and what you find most important.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Over the past 15, 20 years, companies, they don't really hire to the resume anymore. They hire for fit. And they're able to see what type of personalities and what type of culture might be a good fit for somebody. And what she's trying to do is maybe jam in this kind of fit that doesn't really serve her, right? So I think it's important that she realizes that you can, even in relationships, you can have somebody that they tick all the boxes, but it may not be the best fit. It's less about maybe her ability to perform at that. Could she do the job and be miserable? She has to decide how that value works in her life, right?
And even having that conversation with our boss, I think could be really useful. I know that can be very scary and everybody is different as far as how open they are when talking about issues like this when they come up. But that might be an avenue to explore. Talking to somebody could help a lot. So therapist, yes, of course that helps. But if you're in a situation where that's not readily available for whatever reason, you can also talk to other people that either maybe have been in a manager or a boss and just get some feedback on how to address that actual conversation with your employer. Because if you like the people you're around, maybe you don't necessarily want to leave. You just maybe need to be in a different position.
Yeah, different role.
Yeah, different roles. All right. So thank you all for talking with me today and answering some of these questions.
Thanks for having us, Lori.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Lori.
you.
Yeah. We'll talk soon.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Remember, your well-being is a priority, and we're here to help support you every step of the way. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring content on health and wellness. You can also join our Facebook group to connect with Wisconsin wellness providers by clicking the link in our show notes. Take care of yourself and remember that your well-being is a journey, not a destination. We look forward to you joining us again next time on the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Until then, stay well and stay inspired.